As the sunset painted the Wyoming sky in shades of crimson and gold, Winifred Jones gripped the reins of her wagon with white-knuckled determination, her heart pounding against her ribs like a wild mustang. Just 3 days ago, she had been safely ensconced in her Boston townhouse, blissfully unaware that her life was about to change forever. Now, in the summer of 1878, she found herself on a desolate stretch of trail, miles from the nearest settlement, with 6 armed men blocking her path to Rawhide. Well, what do we have here? The tallest outlaw stepped forward, his face partially hidden beneath a dirt-stained hat. A lady traveler all on her lonesome. Winifred straightened her back, refusing to show fear despite the terror clawing at her throat. I'm merely passing through. I have nothing of value. A chorus of laughter erupted from the men. That fancy Wagon says otherwise, miss, another outlaw called out, gesturing with his pistol toward her possessions. Why don't you step down and we'll have ourselves a look? Winifred's mind raced. Her brother William's letter had warned her that the journey to Wyoming territory would be dangerous, but she had dismissed his concerns. After their parents' deaths and the revelation that their family fortune had been lost to bad investments, she had no choice but to accept William's invitation to join him in Rawhide. He had struck silver, he'd written, and had built a life for himself in the West. Now it seemed she might never reach him. I said, "Step down from the wagon," the outlaw repeated, his voice hardening as he cocked his pistol. Winifred's hands trembled. The setting sun cast long shadows across the prairie, and she knew darkness would soon envelop them. In the distance, a cloud of dust rose from the horizon, though the outlaws, focused on their prey, failed to notice. "I believe the lady prefers to stay where she is," a deep voice called from behind the outlaws. The men whirled around, guns raised, to find a lone rider approaching. He sat tall in the saddle, a Winchester rifle balanced casually across his lap. His face was partially obscured by the brim of his hat, but Winifred could make out a strong jawline covered with several days' worth of stubble. "This ain't your business, cowboy," the lead outlaw spat. "Ride on if you value your life." The stranger's horse continued its steady approach. 6 against 1 doesn't seem sporting, he observed calmly, but I reckon I've faced worse odds. Last warning, the outlaw growled, raising his pistol. What happened next occurred so quickly that Winifred could hardly process it. The cowboy's rifle snapped up, and a shot rang out. The lead outlaw howled in pain as his gun went flying from his hand. Before the others could react, the stranger had fired twice more, disarming 2 other men with precision that seemed almost supernatural. The remaining outlaws fumbled for their weapons, but the cowboy had already urged his horse into a gallop, circling around the wagon and firing with deadly accuracy. No shots were aimed to kill, only to disarm and frighten. "This is your chance to leave," the cowboy announced to the outlaws, his voice steady despite the chaos. "I suggest you take it." The bandits, clearly recognizing they were outmatched despite their numbers, backed away toward their horses, cursing and clutching their injured hands. "This ain't over," the leader threatened, blood dripping from his wounded fingers. "For today it is," the cowboy replied, positioning himself between the wagon and the retreating outlaws. As the dust from the outlaws' hasty departure settled, Winifred found her voice at last. "Thank you, sir. I fear to think what might have happened had you not arrived." The cowboy turned to her, and she got her first clear look at his face. He was younger than she had expected, perhaps 30 or so, with intelligent blue eyes that seemed to evaluate everything they saw. A scar ran along his left cheekbone, giving his otherwise handsome features a rugged quality. "Cole Garrison," he introduced himself, tipping his hat. "And you shouldn't be traveling these parts alone, madam," "Winifred Jones," she replied, still clutching the reins tightly. "I'm trying to reach Rawhide. My brother has a claim there." Cole's expression softened slightly. "That's still a day's ride, and these men might return with reinforcements." He glanced at the darkening sky. "Night's falling fast. You'll see sunrise again, I promise, but we need to find shelter now." Something in his confident assurance calmed her racing heart. "Do you know of somewhere safe nearby?" "There's a line shack about 2 miles east of here. Not much, but it's defensible." He glanced at her wagon. "Can you handle the team if I lead the way?" Winifred nodded, though the truth was she had only learned to drive the wagon 3 days ago from the stage driver who had taken her as far as Cheyenne. Before coming west, the closest she'd come to handling horses was calling for a carriage on Beacon Hill. "I manage well enough," she said with more conviction than she felt. Cole's eyes lingered on her face, and she had the distinct impression he saw right through her bravado. "Stay close," he instructed, then turned his horse and started east across the prairie. As Winifred urged her team to follow, she couldn't help but wonder about the stranger who had appeared from nowhere to save her. Cole Garrison moved with the confidence of a man who had spent his life in the saddle. Yet there was something in his manner that suggested he hadn't always been a cowboy. His speech lacked the rough edges she'd heard from other Westerners she'd encountered on her journey. The sun disappeared below the horizon as they traveled, leaving only a faint glow to light their way. Stars began appearing overhead, more brilliant than Winifred had ever seen in Boston. Despite her exhaustion and the lingering fear from the encounter with the Outlaws, she found herself marveling at the vast beauty of the Wyoming sky. "There it is," Cole called back to her, pointing toward a small, dark shape nestled against a rise in the land. As they drew closer, Winifred made out a crude log structure with a single window and door. It was humble to the extreme, but at that moment, it looked more welcoming than the finest hotel in Boston. Cole dismounted smoothly and approached her wagon. "Let me help you down," he offered, extending his hand. Winifred hesitated only briefly before placing her gloved hand in his. His grip was strong and sure as he assisted her from the wagon seat. When her feet touched the ground, her legs nearly buckled from hours of sitting tensely on the hard wooden bench. Cole steadied her with a hand at her elbow. "Easy now. You've had quite a day." "That's putting it mildly," Winifred replied with a weak smile. "I'm not accustomed to being threatened by outlaws." "Few people are," Cole said, a hint of amusement in his voice. "Let me tend to the horses, then we'll see what can be done about making this place habitable for the night." While Cole unhitched her team and saw to their needs alongside his own mount, Winifred approached the line shack cautiously. These small structures dotted the range, used by cowboys during roundups when they were too far from the main ranch to return at night. This one had clearly not been used in some time. Pushing open the door, she was greeted by darkness and the musty smell of disuse. When Cole joined her a few minutes later, he carried a lantern from her wagon and a bundle of supplies. "Stand back," he advised before entering. With practiced efficiency, he checked the corners of the one-room shack, then lit the lantern and hung it from a hook in the ceiling beam. The illuminated interior revealed a small iron stove, a rough-hewn table with one chair, and a narrow cot against the far wall. Dust covered every surface, and a mouse scurried away from the light, disappearing into a crack in the logs. "It's not the Palmer house," Cole commented, setting his rifle by the door, "but it will keep us dry if it rains and make it harder for those men to sneak up on us if they return." Winifred removed her bonnet, suddenly aware of how disheveled she must look after days of travel. "It's perfectly adequate, Mr. Garrison. I'm simply grateful for your intervention and guidance." Cole began clearing the table of dust with a bandana from his pocket. You can have the cot. I'll make do on the floor. That hardly seems fair when you've already done so much, Winifred protested. I've slept on worse, he assured her. Now, do you have any food in that wagon, or should I see what I can rustle up? Despite her exhaustion, Winifred felt a flash of pride. I have provisions. Allow me to contribute at least that much to our situation. She retrieved a basket from her wagon, returning to find that Cole had started a small fire in the stove using kindling that had been left stacked in the corner. The temperature outside was dropping rapidly, and the warmth was welcome. I have bread, cheese, dried apples, and some beef jerky, she said, setting the basket on the now cleaner table. Oh, and a tin of coffee, though I fear I've never made it over an open flame before. I can handle the coffee, Cole offered, taking the tin. Been making it since I was 12 years old. As they prepared a simple meal together, Winifred found herself studying her rescuer when he wasn't looking. Despite his trail-worn clothes and the dust of the prairie that clung to him, there was an unmistakable dignity in his bearing. His hands, though calloused from work, moved with a deftness that spoke of intelligence and capability. May I ask what brings you to these parts, Mr. Garrison? She ventured as they sat down to eat. Cole sliced the bread with a knife from his belt. Just passing through like yourself, and it's just Cole if you don't mind. Out here, formalities don't count for much. Very well. Cole. The familiarity felt strange on her tongue. And you may call me Winifred, though my brother calls me Winnie. A ghost of a smile touched Cole's lips. Winnie suits you better, I think. Softer around the edges. He passed her a tin cup of coffee. And what brings a Boston lady out to Wyoming territory? I recognize that accent anywhere. Winifred's eyebrows rose in surprise. You've been to Boston, once or twice, he replied vaguely. Answer enough. She sensed he was deflecting her question but decided not to press. After all, in the West, she had learned that people's pasts were often their own business. My brother William came out here 5 years ago, she explained instead. He's been working a silver claim near Rawhide. Our parents passed away last winter, and it turns out their estate was not what we had believed. William has invited me to join him. Cole nodded thoughtfully. Silver's brought a lot of folks to these parts. Some find what they're looking for, others don't. And what about you? Winifred couldn't help asking. Have you found what you're looking for out here? For a moment, Cole's confident demeanor faltered, and something like sorrow flickered in his eyes. No, madam, not yet, but the West is big enough that a man can keep looking for a lifetime. They ate in companionable silence after that, the only sounds being the crackling of the fire in the stove and the occasional whistle of wind through the chinks in the log walls. Outside, an owl hooted, reminding Winifred just how far she was from the gaslit streets of Boston. When they had finished eating, Cole insisted on taking the first watch while Winifred rested. Those men might not come back tonight, but I don't take chances, he explained, checking the load in his revolver before returning it to his holster. Too exhausted to argue, Winifred settled onto the cot, wrapping herself in a blanket from her wagon. Despite her physical fatigue, her mind remained alert, processing the day's events. She watched as Cole positioned himself by the window, his profile illuminated by moonlight that filtered through the dirty glass. "Why did you help me?" she asked suddenly, the question that had been nagging at her finally finding voice. "You could have ridden past. Most men would have." Cole turned slightly, though his gaze remained focused on the darkness outside. "Maybe I'm not most men," he replied simply. "Clearly not," Winifred agreed. "But still, you risked your life for a stranger." He was quiet for so long that she thought he might not answer. Finally, he said, 3 years ago, my sister was traveling from St. Louis to meet me in Denver. Her stage was stopped by road agents. There was no one to help her. His voice had grown tight. "I guess I've been trying to balance the scales ever since." Winifred's heart ached at the implication of his words. "I'm very sorry about your sister." Cole nodded once, a sharp downward jerk of his chin. "Get some sleep, Winnie. Tomorrow will be a long day." Despite her racing thoughts, the events of the day soon caught up with Winifred, and she drifted into a fitful sleep. Her dreams were chaotic outlaws with faceless features chased her across an endless prairie, but whenever they drew close, a figure on horseback would appear on the horizon, driving them back. She woke with a start several hours later to find Cole gently shaking her shoulder. "Dawn's coming," he said quietly. "We should move while it's still early, less chance of running into trouble." Outside, the eastern sky was just beginning to lighten, though stars still glittered overhead. Cole had already hitched her team and packed away the few items they had used the night before. "Did you sleep at all?" Winifred asked, noting the shadows beneath his eyes. "Enough," he assured her, though she doubted it was true. "Here." He handed her a cup of fresh coffee. "Drink this while I make one last check around the perimeter." The hot liquid revived Winifred's spirits as she watched Cole move efficiently around the small clearing, checking for signs of visitors during the night. His vigilance was both reassuring and concerning. Clearly, he believed the danger had not passed. When they set out, Cole rode slightly ahead of her wagon, his eyes constantly scanning their surroundings. The morning was crisp and clear, with the promise of heat later in the day. Winifred found herself admiring the way the rising sun illuminated the rolling landscape, turning the prairie grasses to gold. "It's beautiful in its own way, isn't it?" she called to Cole. "So different from New England." He glanced back at her with surprise, as if he hadn't expected her to appreciate the stark scenery. "Takes some getting used to," he acknowledged. "But yes, it has its moments." As the day progressed, Cole gradually relaxed his guard, though he never ceased his vigilance entirely. They stopped briefly at midday beside a small creek to rest the horses and eat a cold meal from Winifred's supplies. "Tell me about Rawhide," Winifred requested as they sat in the shade of her wagon. "What sort of place is it?" Cole stretched his long legs out before him, crossing them at the ankles. "Rough around the edges like most mining towns. Started as not much more than a tent city when silver was discovered in '72. It's grown some since then, has a proper hotel, a bank, 3 saloons, and a general store. Even got a schoolhouse last year, I hear. And my brother's claim, do you know of it?" "The Jones claim?" Cole nodded. "It's one of the more successful ones, about 2 miles north of town. Your brother's done well for himself." Relief washed over Winifred. William's letters had painted a promising picture, but she had worried he might have exaggerated his success to entice her west. "Have you met him?" she asked eagerly. A shadow crossed Cole's face. "Only by reputation," he said after a pause. "We should keep moving if we want to reach Rawhide by nightfall." His sudden change of subject puzzled Winifred, but she didn't press the issue as they resumed their journey. The terrain gradually became more varied as they traveled, with rocky outcroppings breaking up the prairie and small stands of trees appearing along creek beds. By late afternoon, Winifred could see the distant smudge of smoke that indicated human habitation. "Is that Rawhide?" she asked excitedly. Cole nodded, though his expression remained guarded. "We'll be there within the hour, but before we arrive, there's something you should know." The seriousness in his tone caused Winifred's heart to skip. "What is it? Is William all right?" "Your brother is fine as far as I know," Cole assured her quickly. "But Rawhide isn't Boston. The rules are different here. People come west for all sorts of reasons, some to start fresh, others to escape something. Including you," Winifred guessed. Cole met her gaze directly. "Including me." "I'm not exactly welcome in Rawhide. There's history there, It might be better if we parted ways before reaching town." Winifred felt an unexpected pang of disappointment. "I don't understand. Why wouldn't you be welcome?" Before Cole could answer, the sound of hoofbeats reached them. Both turned to see a cloud of dust approaching rapidly from the north, at least 8 riders coming hard in their direction. "Get down," Cole ordered, drawing his revolver and moving his horse between Winifred and the approaching riders. Winifred ducked behind the wagon seat, her heart hammering. "Is it the Outlaws from yesterday?" "No," Cole said grimly. "Worse. That's the Blackwater gang. They control the southern mines and they don't take kindly to strangers passing through their territory." The riders drew closer, spreading out in a semicircle as they approached. Their leader, a burly man with a thick black beard, raised his hand to halt his companions about 20 yards from the wagon. "Well, if it ain't Cole Garrison," the man called, his voice carrying across the distance. "Boys, looks like we got ourselves a 2-for-1 special today. A trespasser and a lady in distress." Cole kept his revolver lowered but ready. "We're just passing through to Rawhide, Jackson. No need for trouble." The man called Jackson spat on the ground. "You've been trouble since the day you showed up in these parts, Garrison. And now you're escorting a pretty lady right into Calloway territory. That takes nerve." Winifred's confusion must have shown on her face because Cole murmured, "The territory's divided between 2 mining interests, the Calloways in Rawhide and the Blackwaters south of here. They've been feuding for years over boundary lines and water rights." "And which side are you on?" Winifred whispered back. "Neither," Cole replied tersely. "That's part of the problem." Jackson urged his horse forward a few steps. "Why don't you hand over the lady and her wagon, Garrison? We'll see she gets where she's going. Eventually." Cole's posture stiffened. "The lady is William Jones's sister. She's under my protection until she reaches Rawhide safely." This announcement caused a stir among the riders. Jackson's eyes narrowed as he studied Winifred more carefully. "Jones's sister, eh? Well, that changes things. The boss would be mighty interested in having a chat with her." "I have no quarrel with your employer," Winifred spoke up, gathering her courage. "I'm simply traveling to join my brother." Jackson laughed, a harsh sound without humor. "Honey, your brother's claim sits on land the Blackwaters believe is rightfully theirs. That makes you part of the quarrel whether you like it or not." Cole's hand tightened on his revolver. "Last chance, Jackson. Ride away now and we can all forget this happened." "Or what?" Jackson sneered. "You'll take on all 8 of us. Even you ain't that good with that 6-shooter." The tension in the air was palpable. Winifred held her breath, certain that violence was only seconds away. Then, unexpectedly, the sound of more riders approaching from the east caught everyone's attention. "Looks like the cavalry's arrived," Cole said with grim satisfaction as 5 riders in dusty trail clothes appeared, each bearing a rifle aimed squarely at Jackson's men. "This is Calloway land," announced the leader of the newcomers, a lean, weathered man with a star pinned to his vest. "You boys know the boundary line and you're a good quarter-mile over it." Jackson's confident demeanor faltered. "We're just having a friendly chat with these travelers, Sheriff. No laws against that." 8 armed men surrounding a lady's wagon ain't what I'd call friendly," the sheriff countered. "Now, why don't you turn those horses around before I decide to escort you back to the boundary myself?" With obvious reluctance, Jackson signaled to his men. "This ain't over, Garrison," he called as they prepared to depart. "And Miss Jones, give your brother a message from me. Tell him no amount of family reunions is gonna save that claim when the truth comes out." With that cryptic statement hanging in the air, the Blackwater men wheeled their horses and galloped away, leaving a cloud of dust in their wake. The sheriff approached once they were gone, holstering his weapon. "Cole Garrison," he greeted with a nod that was neither friendly nor hostile. "Been a while since you showed your face around these parts." "Sheriff Davis," Cole returned the nod. "Wasn't planning on coming back, but circumstances changed." He gestured toward Winifred. "This is Miss Winifred Jones, William's sister from Boston. She ran into some trouble yesterday with road agents. I've been escorting her to Rawhide." Sheriff Davis tipped his hat to Winifred. "Madam, your brother's been expecting you. Sent word 3 days ago that you might be delayed and asked us to keep an eye out." His gaze returned to Cole. "Though he didn't mention you'd have company. Our meeting was unplanned," Winifred explained. "Mr. Garrison came to my aid when my wagon was surrounded by outlaws. He promised I'd see another sunrise, and he's kept that promise admirably." Something in the sheriff's expression softened. "That's so? Well, I suppose Rawhide owes you a debt of gratitude then, Cole. William Jones is an important man in our community." Cole shifted uncomfortably in his saddle. "I didn't do it for Rawhide." "No, I don't suppose you did." The sheriff turned to his men. "Boys, let's escort these two into town. Miss Jones's brother will be mighty relieved to see her." As they resumed their journey with the sheriff's men flanking them protectively, Winifred leaned toward Cole. "You still haven't explained why you're unwelcome in Rawhide," she whispered. "Or what Jackson meant about the truth coming out." Cole's jaw tightened. "It's complicated, Winnie, and not a story for the trail. Just know that there are powerful people in Rawhide who believe I betrayed them, and others outside town who think I didn't betray them enough." "That sounds like a very difficult position to be in," Winifred observed. A humorless smile touched Cole's lips. "You have a gift for understatement." The sun was beginning its descent toward the western horizon as the buildings of Rawhide came into full view. Despite Cole's description, Winifred was unprepared for the raw energy of the place. The main street bustled with activity, miners coming off shift, merchants hawking their wares, ladies in colorful dresses entering and exiting the hotel, and cowboys lounging outside the saloons. The small procession drew curious stares as they made their way down the dusty main street. Sheriff Davis led them toward a substantial 2-story building with a sign identifying it as the Rawhide Hotel and Restaurant. "Your brother's been staying in town the past few nights, waiting for you," the sheriff explained to Winifred. "His claim's a fair piece out, and he wanted to be here when you arrived." As they pulled up in front of the hotel, a tall man with sandy hair and a neatly trimmed beard burst through the front doors. "Winnie," he called, his face lighting up with joy. "William." Winifred exclaimed, her fatigue momentarily forgotten as she recognized her brother despite the 5 years that had passed since she'd last seen him. Cole dismounted quickly and helped Winifred down from the wagon. The moment her feet touched the ground, William engulfed her in a bear hug that lifted her off her feet. "I was beginning to worry," William said, setting her down and holding her at arm's length to examine her. "You should have been here 3 days ago." "There were complications," Winifred began, turning to introduce Cole, but William had already noticed her companion, and the joy in his expression instantly hardened into suspicion. "Garrison," he said coldly, "what are you doing with my sister?" Cole stood his ground, though Winifred noticed his hand drift closer to his holster. "Keeping her alive, Jones. She ran into trouble about 40 miles east of here." William's gaze darted between Cole and Winifred. "Is this true, Winnie?" "Yes," she confirmed. "Mr. Garrison saved me from outlaws who surrounded my wagon. And then today, men from the Blackwater gang intercepted us. If not for him, she faltered, unable to articulate the dangers she had faced." William's expression remained guarded, but he extended his hand to Cole. "Then it seems I owe you my gratitude, Garrison. Whatever our past differences, my sister's safety comes first." After a moment's hesitation, Cole accepted the handshake. "She's a brave woman, your sister, made of tougher stuff than most who come west." Sheriff Davis cleared his throat. "Now that the family reunion's underway, I'll be getting back to my duties. Miss Jones, welcome to Rawhide. Mr. Jones, don't forget the town council meeting tomorrow night." He tipped his hat and departed with his deputies, leaving an awkward silence in their wake. William turned to Winifred. "You must be exhausted. I've arranged rooms for us here at the hotel. Why don't you go inside and freshen up? I'll see to your wagon and belongings." Winifred nodded gratefully but hesitated, glancing at Cole. "What about Mr. Garrison?" "Surely after all he's done, we can offer him a meal and proper thanks." A muscle twitched in William's jaw. "Of course," he said stiffly. "Mr. Garrison is welcome to join us for dinner this evening. 7 o'clock in the hotel dining room." Cole studied William's face for a long moment. "I appreciate the invitation, but I've got business elsewhere. I'll leave Miss Jones in your capable hands." "No," Winifred protested more forcefully than she'd intended. Both men looked at her in surprise. "I mean, please reconsider, Mr. Garrison. I would very much like the opportunity to thank you properly for your assistance." Something flickered in Cole's eyes, a warmth that softened his rugged features. "In that case, Miss Jones, I accept. 7 o'clock. As Cole mounted his horse, preparing to ride off, Winifred impulsively stepped forward. "Where will you stay?" "In town." Cole adjusted his hat, shielding his eyes from the lowering sun. "Got a friend who runs a livery at the edge of town. He usually has space in the loft when I'm passing through." "Then I shall see you this evening," Winifred said firmly. With a final nod to both Joneses, Cole turned his horse and rode down the street, soon disappearing among the bustling crowd. William wasted no time ushering Winifred into the hotel. "I've arranged a hot bath to be brought to your room," he told her as they entered the lobby, "and sent word to the dressmaker. She's bringing over some ready-made items for you to choose from." "That's very thoughtful," Winifred said, though her mind was still on Cole's departure and the unmistakable tension between him and her brother. "William, what history do you have with Mr. Garrison? He saved my life, yet you greeted him like an enemy." William's expression darkened. "It's a long story, Winnie. One best saved until you've rested. Just be careful around him. Cole Garrison isn't what he seems." Before she could press for details, the hotel proprietor approached, welcoming her effusively and directing a porter to show her to her room. The prospect of a hot bath and clean clothes was too tempting to resist, so Winifred allowed herself to be led upstairs, though her curiosity about Cole Garrison and his connection to her brother remained unsatisfied. The hotel room was modest by Boston standards, but luxurious compared to the lined shack where she had spent the previous night. A large copper tub stood in the center of the room, steam rising invitingly from the water within. A screen in the corner provided privacy, and a simple but clean dress had been laid out on the bed. As Winifred sank into the bath, letting the warm water ease her trail-worn muscles, she reflected on the events of the past 2 days. Cole Garrison had appeared in her life like a character from one of the dime novels she'd secretly read as a girl, the mysterious, capable hero who arrived at precisely the right moment. Yet there was clearly more to him than the stoic cowboy he presented to the world. By the time she had bathed, changed into the fresh dress, and arranged her hair as best she could without her lady's maid, it was nearly 7 o'clock. William knocked on her door promptly, offering his arm to escort her downstairs to the dining room. "You look refreshed," he observed as they descended the staircase. "The West agrees with you already." Winifred smiled. I'm not certain that near-death experiences with outlaws and mining gangs qualify as agreeing with me, but I must admit there's an exhilaration to this place that Boston lacks. The dining room was busy but not crowded, with tables spaced comfortably apart. William led her to a corner table where they would have some privacy. To Winifred's disappointment, Cole had not yet arrived. "Tell me about your journey," William requested as they were served. "Your letters suggested you were apprehensive about traveling west." Winifred recounted her experiences, from the train ride to Cheyenne to learning to drive the wagon herself when no escort could be found. William listened attentively, his expression growing increasingly troubled as she described the outlaws' ambush and Cole's timely intervention. "And you say these men seem to be waiting specifically for you?" William asked, frowning. "It seemed that way," Winifred confirmed. "They mentioned my fancy wagon as if they had been expecting someone of means to pass that way." William's fingers drummed on the tablecloth. "That's concerning. The route you took isn't a common one. Someone must have known your plans." Before Winifred could respond, a stir near the dining room entrance caught their attention. Cole Garrison had arrived, and the effect of his presence was immediate. Conversations faltered, and heads turned to watch as he made his way across the room. He had cleaned up considerably since their parting. His hair, damp from a recent wash, was combed back neatly from his forehead. He wore a clean white shirt, dark vest, and trousers that, while well worn, had been carefully brushed free of dust. The gun belt that had seemed a natural extension of him on the trail was absent, though Winifred suspected he wasn't entirely unarmed. "Miss Jones, Mr. Jones," Cole greeted them with a slight bow. "Thank you for the invitation." William rose stiffly, gesturing to the empty chair. "Please join us. We were just discussing my sister's journey." Cole settled into the chair, his posture relaxed despite the palpable tension. "It was more eventful than it should have been," he commented, meeting Winifred's gaze with a hint of warmth in his eyes. Winifred found herself unaccountably pleased that he had accepted the invitation, despite the obvious discomfort it caused him. "I was just telling William about the outlaws," she explained. "He believes they may have been specifically targeting me, which is troubling." "I had the same thought," Cole agreed, accepting a cup of coffee from the waitress who approached their table. Regular road agents would have been satisfied with valuables. These men seemed intent on taking Miss Jones herself. William's expression hardened. "And you believe this has something to do with my claim?" Cole's eyes narrowed slightly. "I think it might have more to do with your connection to the Callaways. The Blackwater gang wouldn't have reacted so strongly today if there wasn't more at stake than just silver." "What do you mean, William's connection to the Callaways?" Winifred asked, glancing between the two men. A flush crept up William's neck. "I've been working closely with Marcus Calloway on expanding operations," he said evasively. "It's a business relationship." "From what I hear, it's become considerably more than that," Cole remarked, his tone neutral but his meaning clear. William's jaw tightened. "My personal affairs are none of your concern, Garrison." "They are when they put your sister in danger," Cole countered. Winifred raised her hand to halt what was quickly becoming an argument. "Gentlemen, please. I've had quite enough excitement for one day without adding a dining room quarrel to the list." "William, I would appreciate knowing what connection you have to this Calloway family that might have made me a target. And Mr. Garrison, I would like to understand why there's such obvious animosity between you and my brother." Both men had the grace to look chastened by her rebuke. William sighed, running a hand through his hair, a gesture so familiar from their childhood that it momentarily transported Winifred back to simpler times. "You deserve the truth," William conceded. Marcus Calloway owns the largest silver mining operation in the territory. My claim adjoins his property, and about a year ago, we discovered that the richest vein of silver runs beneath both our lands. Rather than fight over it, we formed a partnership. The arrangement has been beneficial to both parties. And his daughter? Cole prompted, his eyes never leaving William's face. William's flush deepened. Catherine Calloway and I are engaged to be married. The announcement will be made officially at the Founders' Day celebration next week. Winifred blinked in surprise. Engaged. William, you never mentioned this in your letters. It's recent, William explained. And I wanted to tell you in person, Catherine is. Well, she's remarkable. Strong, intelligent, knows more about mining than most men in these parts. You'll meet her tomorrow. She's eager to welcome you to the family. Cole leaned back in his chair, his expression unreadable. And the Blackwaters have been trying to undermine the Calloway operations for years. A Jones-Calloway marriage would strengthen their position considerably politically and financially, which would make Winifred a valuable pawn if the Blackwaters got their hands on her, William concluded grimly. They could use her to force concessions or even try to stop the merger entirely. Winifred absorbed this information with growing concern. So I've stumbled into the middle of a territorial war, and my value lies in my relationship to you rather than any inherent quality of my own. How flattering. Cole's mouth twitched with suppressed amusement at her dry tone. If it's any consolation, Miss Jones, you've proven yourself quite capable in your own right. Not many Eastern ladies would have maintained their composure through what you've faced. Thank you, Mr. Garrison, Winifred replied, strangely gratified by his assessment. Now, I believe it's your turn for explanations. What history do you share with my brother that makes him look at you as if you're a rattlesnake about to strike? Cole's amusement faded, replaced by a guarded expression. He glanced at William, who gave a resigned nod. I used to ride for the Calloways, Cole explained, his voice dropping so only they could hear him. 3 years ago, Marcus Calloway hired me as security for his operation. The Blackwaters had been sabotaging equipment, threatening workers, trying to drive him out. I was good at my job, too good, maybe. When things escalated to violence, I was caught in the middle. William's expression had grown stormy. Tell her the whole truth, Garrison. Tell her about the men who died because of your actions. Cole met William's accusing stare unflinchingly. There was a confrontation at the boundary line between the two properties. Guns were drawn. 3 Blackwater men ended up dead, along with 2 of Calloway's. I was blamed by both sides, the Calloways, because they believed I'd provoked the fight, the Blackwaters because I'd killed their men. That's not the full story, William insisted. You were working both sides, taking Calloway's money while feeding information to the Blackwaters. Is that true? Winifred asked quietly. Cole's blue eyes found hers, and in them she saw not guilt but a deep, abiding regret. I was hired by the territorial governor to infiltrate both operations, he said slowly. There were rumors of illegal tactics on both sides, claim jumping, water rights violations, even murder. I was supposed to gather evidence, not take sides, but things got out of control. William scoffed. Convenient explanation. It's the truth, Cole said simply. I have the governor's commission to prove it, but by the time the dust settled, neither side wanted to hear it. I was a traitor to both camps, and the governor disavowed any knowledge of my activities to maintain peace in the territory. The tension at the table was palpable. Winifred studied both men, trying to discern truth from anger, facts from grudges. So you've returned to Rawhide now, despite the danger, she observed. Why? Cole hesitated, then reached inside his vest and withdrew a folded piece of paper. This arrived 2 weeks ago. He handed it to William, who unfolded it and scanned its contents, his expression changing from suspicion to confusion. "It's from Catherine," William said, looking up sharply. "She asked you to come back. Why would she do that?" Cole spread his hands. "That's what I came to find out. The note was cryptic, just said that new evidence had come to light that might clear my name, and that she needed to speak with me urgently. Said to come around the time your sister was due to arrive." Winifred's mind raced, connecting pieces of a puzzle she didn't fully understand. "So you were already on your way to Rawhide when our paths crossed. That seems coincidental." "I don't believe in coincidences, Miss Jones," Cole said grimly. "Especially not when they involve ambushes on remote trails and Blackwater gangs just happening to find us before we reach town." William stood abruptly, his chair scraping loudly against the wooden floor. "Are you suggesting Catherine might have something to do with the attack on my sister?" "I'm suggesting," Cole said carefully, "that someone knew exactly where your sister would be and when. Someone who wanted to create a situation where I might get involved. The question is why." The implications hung in the air between them, unsettling and unresolved. Winifred felt as though she had stepped into a play already in progress, expected to understand motivations and relationships established long before her arrival. "I think," she said finally, breaking the tense silence, "that before we make any accusations or assumptions, we need more information. William, you should speak with your fiancé. Mr. Garrison, you should follow up on whatever Catherine wanted to tell you. And you should stay safely in town," William interjected firmly. Winifred bristled at his tone. "I was going to say that I should meet this Catherine Calloway myself. A woman's perspective might shed light on matters that you gentlemen have overlooked." Cole regarded her with newfound respect. "Your sister makes a good point, Jones. Catherine might be more forthcoming with another woman." William appeared ready to object but seemed to reconsider. "Very well. I'll arrange for you to meet Catherine tomorrow. But I want you to promise me you won't leave town without an escort, Winnie. The danger is real." "I'm well aware of that," Winifred assured him, her hand unconsciously moving to her throat where the memory of fear still lingered. "I have no desire to face outlaws or mining gangs again." As their dinner progressed, the conversation shifted to lighter topics: William's success with his claim, Winifred's journey west, and carefully neutral observations about Rawhide and its inhabitants. Cole contributed sparingly, but demonstrated a dry wit that Winifred found herself enjoying more than she would have expected. By the time dessert was served, a surprisingly delicate apple pie that would have held its own in any Boston establishment, the earlier tension had eased somewhat, though it had not disappeared entirely. When they finally rose to depart, Cole offered a formal bow to Winifred. "Miss Jones, it has been a pleasure dining with you. I hope your stay in Rawhide proves less eventful than your journey here." "Thank you, Mr. Garrison," she replied, extending her hand, "for everything." He took her hand briefly, and she was struck by the same sensation she had experienced when he helped her from the wagon, a solid dependability that somehow transcended their brief acquaintance. To William, Cole gave a curt nod. "Jones, I'll be in touch after I speak with Catherine." William returned the nod stiffly. "Be careful, Garrison. Not everyone in Rawhide will be as willing to overlook your past as I've been tonight." "I always am," Cole replied with a hint of the confidence that had first impressed Winifred when he faced down the outlaws. As he walked away, Winifred turned to her brother. "You were unnecessarily harsh with him, William. Whatever happened in the past, he saved my life, twice." William sighed heavily. "I know, and I am grateful, but there's history between us that's difficult to set aside." Cole Garrison represents a dark period in Rawhide's development, a time when neighbor turned against neighbor, and no one knew who to trust. And yet, Winifred observed quietly, Catherine Calloway has apparently reached out to him. Doesn't that suggest there may be more to the story than you've been told? William escorted her back to her room in thoughtful silence. At her door, he kissed her forehead as he had done since she was a child. Get some rest, Winnie. Tomorrow will be a new day, and you can start fresh in your new home. But as Winifred prepared for bed, her thoughts returned repeatedly to Cole Garrison, to his steady presence in the face of danger, to the sorrow she had glimpsed behind his confident exterior, and to the mystery that surrounded his relationship with the Calloways and her brother. Sleep, when it came, was filled with dreams of horsemen on distant horizons and promises whispered as the sun rose over an unfamiliar land. Morning dawned clear and bright in Rawhide, the early light transforming the raw, unfinished quality of the town into something almost picturesque. Winifred rose early, drawn to the window by the sounds of the settlement coming to life, merchants opening their shops, miners heading to the early shift, horses and wagons creating a symphony of activity, unlike anything she had known in Boston. After breakfast with William, who seemed preoccupied but determined to be cheerful for her benefit, Winifred found herself being escorted to the Calloway residence, an imposing two-story structure on the northern edge of town that combined frontier practicality with surprising elegance. Catherine designed it herself, William explained with evident pride as they approached. Marcus gave her free rein, and she created something that would work in this environment while still providing the comforts of civilization. The door was opened by a Chinese servant who bowed politely and ushered them into a foyer decorated with a tasteful combination of Eastern furnishings and Western artwork. Winifred was still admiring a particularly fine landscape painting when a woman's voice called from the top of the stairs. "William, you're early." Winifred turned to see a striking young woman descending toward them. Catherine Calloway was not conventionally beautiful, but she possessed a vitality and intelligence that was immediately apparent. Her dark hair was arranged in a simple but elegant style, and her riding habit, while practical, had clearly been tailored by skilled hands. "Catherine, may I present my sister, Winifred Jones," William said, his voice softening in a way that confirmed his affection for his fiancée. "Winnie, this is Catherine Calloway." Catherine's smile was warm as she extended both hands to Winifred. "At last, William has told me so much about you that I feel we're already acquainted. Welcome to Rawhide, Miss Jones." "Please call me Winnie," Winifred replied, finding herself immediately drawn to Catherine's forthright manner. "And thank you for welcoming me into your home. It's quite impressive." "Thank you. It's still a work in progress, much like Rawhide itself." Catherine turned to William. "Father is waiting for you in the study. Something about adjusting the northern boundary markers before the surveyors arrive next week." William hesitated, glancing at Winifred. "I promised Winnie I wouldn't leave her alone, given recent events." Catherine waved away his concern. "She's hardly alone with me, and we have 3 armed guards on the property at all times. Go. This will give us a chance for female conversation without male supervision, a rare luxury in Rawhide." With a reluctant nod, William departed, leaving the 2 women to make their way to a sunny sitting room overlooking a surprisingly lush garden. "Your brother worries too much," Catherine observed as she poured tea from a silver service. "Though after hearing about your journey, perhaps he has reason." Winifred accepted the offered cup. "You've heard about my encounters with Outlaws, then?" "And with Cole Garrison," Catherine confirmed, her tone carefully neutral. "News travels quickly in a small community like ours." Winifred studied Catherine's expression, trying to discern her feelings about the man who had apparently caused such division in Rawhide. Mr. Garrison mentioned that you had contacted him recently. He seemed surprised by the outreach. If Catherine was taken aback by Winifred's directness, she didn't show it. I did. There have been developments regarding the incident 3 years ago, information that suggests Cole may have been telling the truth about his role. William seems convinced of his guilt, Winifred observed. Catherine sighed, setting down her teacup. William sees things in black and white, a quality I usually admire in him, but the situation with Cole was never that simple. She hesitated, then continued in a lower voice. What I'm about to tell you must remain between us for now, Winnie. Lives depend on discretion. Intrigued and concerned, Winifred nodded her agreement. 3 months ago, a man came to see my father, Catherine began. He was dying consumption in its final stages. He identified himself as a former Blackwater associate who had been present at the confrontation where those 5 men died. He swore that Cole had tried to prevent the violence, not incite it. That the Blackwaters had planned the ambush deliberately to eliminate certain Callaway employees who knew too much about their illegal activities. Did your father believe him? Not at first, Catherine admitted, but the man provided details that only someone who was there could have known. And then he gave us this. She withdrew a folded paper from her pocket and handed it to Winifred. It was a crude map showing the boundary between the Callaway and Blackwater properties, with X marks at several locations and a series of dates scribbled in the margins. It's a record of sabotage operations, Catherine explained, planned and executed by the Blackwaters over the past 4 years. The man claimed that Cole discovered this map and was attempting to bring it to the territorial authorities when he was caught in the crossfire at the boundary. Winifred examined the document carefully. If this is genuine, it would support Mr. Garrison's claim that he was working to expose wrongdoing on both sides. Exactly, Catherine agreed, which is why I wrote to him. But before I could meet with him, the man who brought us this information was found dead in his boarding house. The official ruling was that his illness finally claimed him, but you suspect otherwise, Winifred concluded. Catherine nodded grimly. And then your wagon was attacked on a remote trail, and Cole Garrison just happened to be in the right place at the right time to save you. The implication hung in the air between them. Winifred set down her teacup, her mind racing. You think someone knew he was coming back because of your letter and deliberately put me in danger to? What? Test his loyalties? Or to eliminate both of you, Catherine said bluntly. The Blackwaters would benefit greatly from delaying or preventing my marriage to William. Your death would devastate him, possibly cause him to leave the territory entirely. And Cole has always been a threat to their operations, even in exile. The cool, analytical way Catherine laid out these possibilities should have been shocking, but Winifred found herself appreciating the other woman's clear-eyed assessment of their situation. So what do we do now? Winifred asked. A smile touched Catherine's lips. I was hoping you'd ask that. William wants to keep you wrapped in cotton wool, but I suspect you're made of sterner stuff. I am my brother's sister, Winifred acknowledged. Once we decide on a course of action, we tend to see it through. Good, because I have a plan, but I'll need your help and Cole's to execute it. Catherine leaned forward, lowering her voice further. The Founders' Day celebration is in 4 days. Everyone of importance in the territory will be there, including the Blackwaters. It's a traditional time of truce, when even feuding parties maintain civility for the good of the community. A perfect opportunity to expose the truth, Winifred surmised. Precisely. But we'll need irrefutable evidence, something more than the word of a dead man, and a map that could have been drawn by anyone. Catherine's eyes gleamed with determination. And I believe I know where to find it. For the next hour, The two women huddled together, speaking in hushed tones as Catherine outlined her suspicions and the plan she had been developing since receiving the dying man's confession. By the time William returned from his meeting with Marcus Calloway, Winifred had formed a deep respect for her future sister-in-law's intelligence and courage. "You two seem to be getting along well," William observed, pleased but slightly suspicious at their evident conspiracy. "Famously," Catherine confirmed, rising to greet him with a kiss on the cheek. "Your sister is everything you promised, William. I can see why you've missed her so." William smiled, the tension that had marked his features since Winifred's arrival momentarily easing. "Then you won't mind if I steal her away? I promised to show her the claim today." "Actually," Catherine interjected smoothly, "I was hoping Winnie might accompany me to the dressmaker's this afternoon. If she's to be properly introduced at the Founders' Day celebration, she'll need appropriate attire." Winifred caught the subtle signal in Catherine's eyes. "I would enjoy that very much," she agreed quickly. "The dress I brought from Boston is hardly suitable for a Western celebration." William looked between them, clearly sensing some undercurrent but unable to identify it. "Very well. But take one of the guards with you. I don't want either of you unprotected in town." "Of course, darling," Catherine assured him with a smile that would have seemed patronizing from anyone else, but somehow came across as affectionate from her. "We'll be the very picture of caution." As William escorted Winifred back to the hotel to collect her things for the shopping expedition, he seemed preoccupied. "Catherine likes you," he observed finally. "She doesn't warm to many people so quickly." "The feeling is mutual," Winifred replied honestly. "She's remarkable, William." "I can see why you fell in love with her." A shadow crossed his face. "Just be careful, Winnie. Catherine is passionate about her causes. Sometimes she takes risks that," he broke off, shaking his head. "Never mind. Just promise me you won't let her talk you into anything dangerous." Too late for that, Winifred thought, but aloud she merely said, "I'm sure we'll have a perfectly ordinary afternoon of feminine pursuits." William's skeptical expression suggested he knew his sister too well to believe that entirely, but he let the matter drop. The shopping expedition did indeed begin at the dressmaker's shop, where Winifred was measured for a gown to wear to the Founders' Day celebration. But once that business was concluded, Catherine dismissed the guard William had insisted accompany them, sending him back to the Calloway residence with the packages and a message that the ladies had decided to take tea at the hotel and would return later. "Now," Catherine said as they watched the man depart, "we have approximately 2 hours before anyone will expect us back. Let's make them count." She led Winifred down a side street to a small, weathered building with a sign identifying it as Dawson's Livery and Smithy. Inside, the familiar smells of horses, hay, and leather filled the air. "Miss Calloway," a gruff voice called from the shadows at the back of the stable. "Wasn't expecting you today." "Change of plans, Mr. Dawson," Catherine replied. "Is he here?" The stableman nodded toward a ladder leading to the hayloft. "Up there. Been pacing like a caged mountain lion since dawn." Catherine thanked him and gestured for Winifred to follow her up the ladder. The hayloft was surprisingly spacious, with a small window at one end providing both light and ventilation. Cole Garrison stood beside this window, his back to them as he gazed out at the town. "Cole," Catherine called softly. He turned, his expression shifting from wariness to surprise when he saw Winifred. "Ladies, this is unexpected, but necessary," Catherine replied, moving deeper into the loft. "We don't have much time, so I'll be direct. I've told Winnie everything about the dying man's confession, the map, and my suspicions about why her wagon was attacked." Cole's gaze moved to Winifred. "And you believe her?" "I do," Winifred said simply. Mr. Garrison, when you came to my aid against those outlaws, did you suspect it might be a deliberate attempt to draw you into a conflict? He considered the question carefully. Not at first. I thought it was just bad luck, wrong place, wrong time for you. But when the Blackwater gang intercepted us so close to town, he shook his head. That was too convenient. We think the Blackwaters are trying to prevent my marriage to William, Catherine explained. It would strengthen the Calloway position considerably, both financially and politically. If William were to lose his sister in a tragic accident, he might abandon his claim and return east. Two birds, one stone. And I'm just a bonus target, Cole concluded grimly. But why bring Miss Jones into this discussion? The safest thing for her would be to stay as far from this mess as possible. Winifred stepped forward. Because I refuse to be used as a pawn in someone else's game, Mr. Garrison. If my life was endangered to manipulate my brother or to draw you into a trap, I want those responsible held accountable. A flicker of admiration crossed Cole's face. Fair enough. But what exactly are you proposing we do about it? Catherine outlined her plan quickly, how they would use the Founders' Day celebration as cover to obtain definitive evidence of the Blackwaters' illegal activities, then present it publicly in a way that couldn't be ignored or dismissed. It's risky, Cole warned when she had finished. If we're caught trespassing on Blackwater property, they'll have every right to shoot us as claim jumpers. And even if we find what you're looking for, there's no guarantee the territorial authorities will act on it. That's why we need undeniable evidence, Catherine insisted. And why we need your help, Cole. You know their operation better than anyone. He paced the length of the hayloft, considering. Even if I agreed to this madness, we'd need access to their main office. That building is guarded day and night. Not during the Founders' Day celebration, Catherine countered. Everyone will be in town for the festivities. It's our one opportunity. And what role am I to play in this dangerous scheme? Winifred inquired, her practical nature asserting itself. I've been in Rawhide less than a day. I hardly know one end of a mine from another. Catherine and Cole exchanged a look that immediately put Winifred on alert. We need someone the Blackwaters don't know, Catherine explained carefully. Someone who can move freely at the celebration without arousing suspicion. Someone who can create a distraction if necessary. No, Cole said flatly. It's too dangerous. If anything happened to William's sister on my watch, nothing will happen to me because you'll both ensure it doesn't, Winifred interrupted. And I am perfectly capable of making my own decisions, Mr. Garrison. I did not travel 2,000 miles to sit safely in a hotel room while others determine my fate. The vehemence in her tone seemed to surprise both Catherine and Cole. For a moment, silence filled the hayloft, broken only by the soft sounds of horses moving in the stalls below. Finally, Cole sighed, a sound of resignation rather than defeat. You're as stubborn as your brother, he observed, though there was a hint of respect in his voice. Very well. But we do this my way carefully, with multiple contingency plans and clear boundaries about acceptable risks. Catherine's smile was triumphant. I knew I could count on both of you. As they spent the next hour refining their plan, Winifred found herself studying Cole Garrison with new eyes. The man who had seemed almost mythic during their journey to Rawhide, the lone gunman who appeared from nowhere to save her, was revealed as something more complex and interesting. He was methodical in his planning, insightful about human nature, and possessed a dry humor that occasionally surfaced in his comments. The key, he explained as they concluded their discussion, is to maintain the appearance of normalcy until the moment we act. Miss Jones should be seen enjoying the celebration with her brother. Catherine should play the role of devoted fiancée and daughter. I'll remain out of sight until necessary. And William, Winifred asked, concerned about keeping secrets from her brother. Catherine and Cole exchanged another of those speaking glances. "The fewer people who know the details, the better," Catherine said gently. "William's integrity is one of his finest qualities, but it also makes him predictable. The Blackwaters would expect him to go through official channels, which they've already compromised. Besides," Cole added, "if anything goes wrong, it's better if he can honestly say he knew nothing about it. His standing in the community is important to both of you." Winifred wasn't entirely convinced, but she recognized the logic of their argument. "Very well, but I don't like deceiving him." "None of us do," Catherine assured her. "But sometimes protecting someone means shielding them from certain truths, at least temporarily." As they prepared to leave the livery, Cole drew Winifred aside while Catherine spoke privately with the stableman. "Are you certain about this?" he asked quietly. "There's no shame in choosing safety. You've already shown more courage than most in getting this far." Winifred appreciated his concern but shook her head firmly. "Mr. Garrison, when those outlaws surrounded my wagon, I was terrified. I felt helpless in a way I had never experienced before. I don't ever want to feel that way again. If participating in this plan helps ensure that, then the decision is simple." Cole studied her face, seeming to search for something in her expression. Whatever he saw must have satisfied him, because he nodded once, decisively. "Then I'll do everything in my power to keep you safe, both of you," he amended, glancing toward Catherine. "But I want your word that if I tell you to run, you run. No heroics, no last stands." "Agreed, agreed," Winifred said solemnly, offering her hand to seal the pact. Cole's hand enveloped hers, warm and calloused. The contact lasted only a moment, but Winifred felt a curious reluctance to break it, a sensation she filed away for later examination. As they parted ways, Catherine and Winifred, to return to their ostensible shopping expedition, Cole to continue gathering information about the Blackwaters operations, Winifred found herself reflecting on how drastically her life had changed in just a few days. From a proper Boston lady contemplating a quiet future as her brother's housekeeper, she had transformed into a woman plotting to expose a criminal conspiracy in a frontier mining town. The thought should have terrified her. Instead, beneath the natural apprehension, she felt more alive than she had in years. The next 3 days passed in a blur of activity as Winifred was introduced to rawhide society and the routines of her new life. William gave her a tour of his claim, explaining the process of silver mining with obvious pride. She met Marcus Calloway, Catherine's father, a shrewd businessman whose rough manners belied a sharp intellect. She attended a Ladies' Aid Society meeting with Catherine, where she was welcomed warmly by the women who formed the backbone of the community. Throughout it all, she maintained the appearance of a properly grateful sister, settling into her new surroundings with appropriate enthusiasm. Only in brief, private moments with Catherine did she allow her thoughts to turn to their coming mission. Cole remained scarce, though Winifred caught glimpses of him about town, always at a distance, never acknowledging her directly. Their plan required separation until the night of the celebration, but she found herself missing his steady presence more than seemed reasonable for such a brief acquaintance. The evening before Founder's Day, William escorted Winifred to dinner at the Calloway residence, a formal affair attended by several prominent citizens of Rawhide and the surrounding region. Marcus Calloway used the occasion to officially welcome Winifred to the community and to toast the upcoming marriage of his daughter to William. "To family," he proclaimed, raising his glass. "The old and the new, bound together by bonds stronger than silver." As glasses clinked around the table, Winifred's gaze met Catherine's briefly. Both women smiled, though their thoughts were on the risk they would take the following day, a risk that could strengthen those family bonds or shatter them completely. Later that night, unable to sleep, Winifred stood at her hotel window gazing out at the moonlit streets of Rawhide. The town had transformed in preparation for Founders' Day, with bunting and banners decorating the main thoroughfare and a large pavilion erected in the central square. A movement in the shadows across the street caught her attention, a figure standing motionless, looking up at her window. Though his face was obscured by darkness, Winifred knew instinctively that it was Cole. She raised her hand in silent acknowledgement, and after a moment, he returned the gesture before melting back into the night. The simple exchange brought her a curious comfort. Whatever dangers tomorrow might bring, she would not face them alone. Founders' Day dawned clear and bright, the sky a perfect Wyoming blue that seemed to stretch endlessly above the festive town. Winifred dressed carefully in the new gown Catherine had helped her select, a practical but flattering creation in deep green that complemented her auburn hair. William collected her for breakfast, his excitement about the day's events evident in his animated conversation and frequent smiles. "The whole territory turns out for this celebration," he explained as they walked to the hotel dining room. "Even the Blackwaters observe the truce. It's a tradition that predates most of the buildings in town." "It sounds wonderful," Winifred replied, genuinely interested despite her preoccupation with their plan. "I'm looking forward to experiencing it." The dining room was crowded with visitors who had arrived for the celebration, creating a lively atmosphere that continued as they stepped out onto the main street after their meal. Bunting and flags decorated every building, and a band was setting up in the pavilion at the center of town. William guided Winifred through the growing crowd, introducing her to so many people that she quickly lost track of names and faces. Yet throughout the morning, she remained acutely aware of the time, knowing that at precisely noon, the first phase of their plan would begin. At 11:30, Catherine joined them, resplendent in a blue gown that matched her eyes. "Winnie, you look lovely," she greeted, embracing Winifred warmly. "Are you enjoying your first Founders' Day?" "Immensely," Winifred replied, returning the embrace and using the moment to whisper, "Everything is ready." Catherine's imperceptible nod was her only answer before she turned to William with a dazzling smile. "Darling, Father needs you for a moment." "Something about introducing you during his speech." William hesitated, glancing at Winifred. "I promised not to leave Winnie alone." "Oh, she won't be alone," Catherine assured him. "I'll stay with her until you return. Besides, in this crowd, what could possibly happen?" With a reluctant nod, William departed, making his way toward the pavilion where Marcus Calloway was conversing with several distinguished-looking gentlemen. The moment he was out of sight, Catherine's expression turned serious. "Are you certain you're ready for this, Winnie?" "Once we begin, there's no turning back." Winifred squared her shoulders. "I'm ready. Where's Cole?" "In position. He'll meet us at the rendezvous point in 20 minutes. Catherine linked her arm through Winifred's, guiding her casually toward the edge of the crowd. "Remember, if anyone asks, we're just stepping away for a moment of feminine privacy." They moved unhurriedly through the throng, smiling and nodding to acquaintances, but never stopping long enough for conversation. At the eastern edge of town, they slipped between two buildings and into a narrow alley that led to a small stable yard. Cole was waiting for them, mounted on his bay gelding and leading two saddled horses. He had abandoned his usual trail clothes for darker attire that would blend better with shadows, and his expression was one of focused determination. "Any complications?" he asked as they approached. Catherine shook her head, gathering her skirts to mount the horse he had prepared for her. "Everyone who matters is at the celebration. The way should be clear." Winifred approached the third horse with more confidence than she felt. She had ridden occasionally in Boston's parks, but never astride, and never on a Western saddle. Cole, noting her hesitation, dismounted quickly to assist her. "Left foot in the stirrup, grab the horn and swing up," he instructed quietly. "The horse knows what to do, you just need to stay on." His hands at her waist as he helped her mount sent an unexpected warmth through her, despite the tension of the moment. "Thank you," she murmured as she settled into the saddle, adjusting her skirts as modestly as possible given the circumstances. Cole's eyes met hers briefly, and something in his gaze made her breath catch. Then he was back on his own horse, leading them out of the stable yard and onto a little used trail that skirted the eastern edge of town. "The Blackwater operation is about 3 miles south," he explained as they rode. "Their main office is in a converted bunkhouse near the entrance to the primary shaft. If Catherine's information is correct, the ledgers and correspondence we need will be in Jackson's private office." "And if they are not?" Winifred asked. "Then we leave empty-handed and try another approach," Cole replied firmly. "No unnecessary risks." They rode in silence after that, each focused on the task ahead. As they approached a ridge overlooking the Blackwater property, Cole signaled for them to dismount and proceeded on foot to scout the area. "2 guards at the main entrance," he reported when he returned. "But they're not paying much attention, probably annoyed at missing the celebration." The side entrance should be clear, as Catherine predicted. Moving with practiced stealth, Cole led them down the ridge and across an open stretch of ground to a cluster of buildings that formed the heart of the Blackwater operation. The main structure was larger than Winifred had expected, with a broad porch across the front and several windows along each side. "Stay close and move exactly as I do," Cole instructed in a whisper. "If anything goes wrong, head back to the horses and ride for town. Don't wait for us." Winifred nodded, though she had privately resolved not to leave without Catherine and Cole, regardless of his instructions. They approached from the rear of the building, using a stand of cottonwoods for cover. The side door, as Catherine had indicated, was unguarded. Cole tried the handle, carefully locked as expected. From his pocket, he produced a slender piece of metal and inserted it into the keyhole. "Where did you learn to do that?" Winifred whispered, fascinated despite their precarious situation. A ghost of a smile touched Cole's lips. "Misspent youth," he murmured as the lock clicked open beneath his skilled manipulation. The door swung inward silently, revealing a dimly lit hallway. Cole entered first, his movements fluid and quiet, with Catherine and Winifred following closely behind. The interior of the building was surprisingly cool after the heat outside, and Winifred fought a shiver as they crept down the corridor toward a door at the far end. "Jackson's office," Catherine breathed, pointing. "That's where the records would be kept." Cole tried the door, also locked, and set to work with his pick again. This lock proved more challenging, requiring several tense minutes before it yielded with a soft click. The office beyond was neat and Spartan, dominated by a large desk and a wall of filing cabinets. Heavy curtains were drawn across the windows, creating a perpetual twilight within the room. "Look for anything related to claim boundaries, water rights, or correspondence with territorial officials," Cole directed as they split up to search the room. "Anything that would prove they've been operating outside the law." Winifred approached the desk, her pulse quickening as she opened the top drawer and began carefully examining its contents. Most of the papers were mundane supply orders, payroll records, routine correspondence. But in the bottom drawer, she discovered a leather-bound ledger different from the others. "I think I've found something," she called softly, opening the book to reveal columns of figures and notations that made little sense to her untrained eye. Cole joined her, taking the ledger and flipping through it with growing interest. "This is it," he confirmed, his voice tight with excitement. "Two sets of books, one for the territorial assessor, one for the actual operation. They've been underreporting production by at least 50% to avoid taxes." Catherine, who had been searching the filing cabinets, made a small sound of triumph. "And here's the correspondence with Judge Harmon about the water rights case against my father. They've been bribing him for years." The three of them worked quickly, gathering the most damning evidence into a satchel Catherine had brought for the purpose. Winifred felt a growing sense of exhilaration. They were actually going to succeed. Then, without warning, voices sounded in the hallway outside. The three conspirators froze, exchanging alarmed glances. "Don't see why we couldn't stay for the celebration," one voice complained. "Not like anything happens here on Founders' Day." "Boss's orders," a second voice replied. "Said to check the office every hour, no exceptions." Cole motioned urgently toward a door at the back of the room, likely a closet or storage area. Catherine and Winifred hurried toward it as he gathered the last of their evidence into the satchel. The closet was cramped and dark, barely large enough for the three of them to squeeze inside. Cole pulled the door closed just as they heard the main office door open. "See, nothing's changed since we checked an hour ago," the first voice said, now alarmingly close. "Wait," the second voice sharpened. "The desk drawer's open. Did you leave it like that?" Winifred's heart pounded so loudly she was certain it would give them away. Beside her, Cole had drawn his revolver, though in the confined space it would be difficult to use effectively. Catherine clutched the satchel of evidence to her chest, her breathing shallow and controlled. "Wasn't me," the first voice replied, suddenly wary. "Check the rest of the room." Footsteps approached the closet door. Winifred closed her eyes, bracing for discovery. Cole shifted slightly, positioning himself in front of the two women as best he could in the tight space. Then, unexpectedly, a commotion erupted from elsewhere in the building, shouting voices and the sound of running feet. "What the devil?" one of the men in the office exclaimed. "Fire!" someone yelled from down the hallway. "The assay office is burning." The footsteps in the room reversed direction rapidly, followed by the sound of the office door slamming open. "Come on!" one of the men called, and then they were gone, their pounding steps receding down the hallway. For several heartbeats, none of the three hidden conspirators moved or spoke. Then Cole carefully eased the closet door open, peering out into the now empty office. "Coast is clear," he whispered, "but we need to move fast. That fire won't distract them for long." "Fire," Catherine echoed. "That wasn't part of the plan." Cole's expression was grim. "No, it wasn't. Which means someone else is here, someone who may or may not be on our side." They moved swiftly back through the hallway to the side entrance, Cole leading the way with his revolver at the ready. Outside, they could see smoke rising from a small building about 50 yards away, with several men running toward it carrying buckets. "Now's our chance," Cole urged, guiding them toward the stand of cottonwoods that had provided cover for their approach. "Stay low and move quickly." They had almost reached the trees when a voice called from behind them. "That's far enough." Turning, they found Jackson himself standing at the corner of the main building, a shotgun leveled at them. His face twisted with rage as he recognized them. "Garrison. I might have known you'd be behind this." Cole pushed Catherine and Winifred behind him, keeping his revolver trained on Jackson. "Lower the shotgun, Jackson. Nobody needs to get hurt here." "You're trespassing on Blackwater property," Jackson snarled. "I've got every right to shoot all three of you where you stand." His gaze shifted to Catherine, and his expression darkened further. "Especially you, Miss Calloway. Your father will pay dearly for this insult." "The only one who will be paying is you, Jackson," Catherine retorted, holding up the satchel. "We have evidence of your illegal operations, the double bookkeeping, the bribes to Judge Harmon, everything. It's over." Jackson's laugh was ugly. "You think that matters out here? By the time you reach town, those papers will be ash and 3 tragic accidents will have occurred on Blackwater land." The standoff stretched, tense and precarious. Winifred could see the other Blackwater men still occupied with the fire, but it would only be minutes before they noticed the confrontation taking place. Then, unexpectedly, a new voice joined the tableau, a voice Winifred recognized instantly. "I wouldn't count on that, Jackson." William stepped from the trees, a rifle in his hands, aimed squarely at Jackson's chest. His expression was one Winifred had never seen before, cold fury barely contained beneath a veneer of control. "Jones," Jackson spat. "Should have known you'd be part of this too." "I wasn't," William replied evenly. "But I know my sister and my fiancé well enough to sense when they're hiding something. When they slipped away from the celebration, I followed." His gaze briefly met Winifred's, a mixture of concern and betrayal in his eyes before returning to Jackson. "Lower the shotgun. Now." For a moment it seemed Jackson might refuse. Then, from the direction of the burning building, shouts indicated that the other Blackwater men had spotted the confrontation. "It's still 5 against 4, Jackson pointed out, a cruel smile spreading across his face. "And my men are armed." "Make that 6 against 5, came yet another voice as Sheriff Davis and a deputy emerged from the trees on the opposite side, both holding rifles at the ready. "And I've got 10 more deputies waiting at the edge of your property, Jackson. This doesn't end well for you." The sheriff's unexpected appearance tipped the balance decisively. Jackson's shoulders sagged as he slowly lowered his shotgun, his face a mask of thwarted rage. "Take him into custody," Sheriff Davis ordered his deputy, "and signal the others to move in and secure the rest of Blackwater's men." As the deputy approached to disarm Jackson, Cole finally lowered his revolver, turning to William with a guarded expression. "Your timing is impeccable, Jones." William's jaw was tight. "No thanks to any of you. What were you thinking bringing my sister into this?" "It was my decision, William," Winifred stated firmly, stepping forward. "And a necessary one. The Blackwaters were behind the attack on my wagon. They've been operating outside the law for years, and someone had to gather the evidence to stop them." "We tried to protect you, darling," Catherine added, moving to William's side and placing a hand on his arm. "We knew your position in the community would make it difficult for you to participate in something unorthodox." William's expression remained stern, but some of the anger left his eyes as he looked at Catherine. "You could have been killed, all of you. There had to be another way." "There wasn't," Cole said quietly. "Believe me, I explored every option before agreeing to this plan." He gestured toward the satchel Catherine still clutched. "But it worked. What's in there will put Jackson and his employers away for a long time." Sheriff Davis approached, having overheard the exchange. "I'll need that evidence, Miss Calloway. And I'll need statements from all of you about what transpired here." As Catherine handed over the satchel, explaining its contents to the sheriff, Winifred found herself standing beside Cole, watching as Blackwater's men were rounded up and disarmed by the deputies who had appeared from the surrounding area. "How did the sheriff know to be here?" she asked quietly. Cole's mouth curved in a slight smile. "That was my contingency plan. I sent a message to Davis this morning suggesting he might want to patrol near Blackwater property during the celebration. Didn't tell him why, but Davis is a good lawman. He can read between the lines. And the fire." Winifred pressed. "You said that wasn't part of the plan." "No," Cole admitted, his expression turning thoughtful. "That remains a mystery, though I have my suspicions. Before he could elaborate, William approached them, his anger now tempered with grudging respect. "Sheriff Davis says the evidence you gathered is substantial. The territorial governor will have to act on it, regardless of political considerations." "Then it was worth the risk," Winifred replied, meeting her brother's gaze steadily. William sighed, running a hand through his hair in that familiar gesture that tugged at Winifred's heart. "Perhaps. But don't ever do anything like this again, Winnie. I've only just found you again. I couldn't bear to lose you." His sincere concern softened her defensive posture. "I promise to be more forthcoming in the future," she offered, "if you promise to remember that I'm a grown woman capable of making my own decisions." A reluctant smile touched William's lips. "Fair enough." His gaze shifted to Cole. "And you, Garrison, I owe you an apology. It seems I misjudged your character and your motives." Cole accepted the acknowledgement with a simple nod. "Easy mistake to make, given the circumstances. I didn't exactly present the most trustworthy figure 3 years ago." "No," William agreed, "but you've more than redeemed yourself today." He extended his hand once more, and this time when Cole took it, the handshake was firm and genuine. The ride back to Rawhide was considerably less tense than the journey out had been. Sheriff Davis insisted on escorting them, along with 2 deputies, just in case any of Blackwater's men got ideas about retaliation. By the time they reached town, the Founders' Day celebration was in full swing, though whispers about the events at the Blackwater property had already begun to circulate. Marcus Calloway met them at the sheriff's office, his expression a mixture of relief at his daughter's safety and fury at the risk she had taken. "Of all the foolhardy reckless," he began, only to be interrupted by Catherine. "It worked, Father," she said simply. "The evidence is solid. The Blackwaters won't threaten our operation or anyone else's again." Marcus's bluster deflated slightly. "You could have been killed, but I wasn't," Catherine pointed out. "Thanks to Cole, and to William and Winnie." The older man turned to Cole, studying him with new eyes. "Seems I might have been hasty in my judgment of you, Garrison. The town owes you a debt." Cole shifted uncomfortably under the praise. "I was just trying to set things right, sir. Nothing more." "Well, consider it done," Marcus declared, "and consider yourself welcome in Rawhide again officially." As the others continued discussing the implications of the day's events with Sheriff Davis, Winifred found herself stepping outside for a moment of quiet. The celebration continued in the town square, oblivious to the drama that had unfolded just miles away. Lanterns were being lit as dusk approached, casting a warm glow over the festive scene. She heard the door open behind her and turned to find Cole joining her on the boardwalk. "Are you all right?" he asked softly. Winifred smiled, surprised to realize that she truly was. "Better than all right, actually. For the first time since arriving in Wyoming, I feel like I might belong here." Cole leaned against a post, his posture relaxed in a way she hadn't seen before. "You handled yourself well today." Not many would have kept their composure in that closet when discovery seemed imminent. "I had good company," she replied, "and a fine teacher in remaining calm under pressure." She studied his face in the fading light, noting how the tensions of the past days had eased, leaving him looking younger and more approachable. "What will you do now, Mr. Garrison, now that your name has been cleared?" He considered the question, his gaze drifting toward the distant mountains. "Not sure. Been on the move so long, I'm not certain I remember how to stay in one place." "You could remain in Rawhide," Winifred suggested, trying to keep her tone casual despite the sudden quickening of her pulse. "I understand the sheriff might be looking for a deputy." Cole's eyebrows rose slightly. "Been making inquiries, have you?" A blush warmed Winifred's cheeks. "Merely gathering information, a practical habit." His smile deepened, reaching his eyes in a way that transformed his whole face. "I'll consider it. Might be nice to put down roots somewhere." His gaze met hers, and something passed between them, a connection that transcended their brief acquaintance. The door opened again, and William stepped out. If he noticed the charged atmosphere between his sister and Cole, he gave no sign of it. "Sheriff Davis is ready to take our official statements," he announced. "And Catherine is insisting we all return to the celebration afterward. Something about not letting the day be entirely consumed by intrigue." "She's right," Winifred agreed, reluctantly breaking the moment with Cole. "It is, after all, my first Founder's Day in Rawhide. I should experience it properly." As they returned inside, Cole held the door for her, his hand brushing hers briefly in a touch that seemed both accidental and deliberate. "You'll see many more Founder's Days, I expect," he murmured. "This is just the beginning." The taking of statements was a lengthy process, but eventually they were released to rejoin the celebration. The night had fully descended by then, with stars appearing in the velvet sky above Rawhide. The town square was illuminated by dozens of lanterns, and a folk band played lively music for dancers on a wooden platform erected for the occasion. Marcus Calloway insisted on making a public toast to the heroes of the day, though at Sheriff Davis's request. He kept the details vague, mentioning only that a threat to the community's peace had been successfully resolved. The cheers that greeted this announcement were enthusiastic, if somewhat confused. As the evening progressed, William and Catherine were frequently pulled away by well-wishers and those curious about the day's events, leaving Winifred and Cole standing somewhat awkwardly at the edge of the festivities. "Would you care to dance, Miss Jones?" Cole asked suddenly, gesturing toward the platform where couples were moving to a waltz. Winifred hesitated. "I'm not certain I know the Western style." "It's not so different," Cole assured her, offering his hand. "I promise not to let you fall." The words echoed his promise from their first meeting. "You'll see sunrise again. I promise," a vow he had kept faithfully. Winifred placed her hand in his, allowing him to lead her toward the dance floor. Cole moved with the same easy grace he showed on horseback, guiding her confidently through the steps of the waltz. For a man who had spent years on the trail, his dancing was remarkably polished. "Another skill from your misspent youth?" Winifred inquired with a smile. "My mother insisted all her sons learn to dance properly," Cole replied, a hint of nostalgia in his voice. "Said it was the mark of a gentleman, regardless of circumstances." "She was a wise woman," Winifred observed. "Where is she now?" "Gone," Cole said simply. 10 years ago. Influenza took both my parents within a week of each other." "I'm sorry," Winifred said softly. "It's a special kind of loneliness, losing both parents." Cole's hand tightened slightly at her waist. "Yes, it is, though I suspect you understand that better than most." The music changed to a slower, more intimate melody. Around them, other couples drew closer together, but Cole maintained a respectful distance between them, even as his eyes held hers with an intensity that made Winifred's heart race. "What are you thinking?" she asked, unable to interpret the emotion in his gaze. "That when I rode toward your wagon 4 days ago, I never imagined where that path would lead," he replied honestly. "You've changed things, Winnie Jones, more than you know." Before she could respond, the music ended, and couples around them began to applaud. Cole escorted her from the dance floor, but instead of returning to where William and Catherine stood in conversation with Marcus and Sheriff Davis, he guided her toward a quieter area near the edge of the square. "I should tell you something," he said, his manner suddenly serious. "About the fire today at Blackwater's property." Winifred nodded, sensing this was important to him. "You said you had suspicions." More than suspicions now, Cole admitted. While you were giving your statement, I had a private word with Sheriff Davis. The fire was set deliberately, but not to help us, at least, not directly. It was meant to destroy certain records kept in the assay office. Records of what? Winifred asked. Cole's expression grew troubled. Deaths, Winnie. Miners who died in accidents over the past 5 years. Davis found a partial list before the fire consumed most of the documents. One of the names on it was Cole Garrison. Winifred gasped softly. Your sister, Cole nodded, his jaw tight with controlled emotion. She wasn't killed by road agents on the way to Denver. She made it to Rawhide. Davis believes she discovered something about the Blackwater's operation, something damning enough that they silenced her permanently. Oh, Cole, Winifred whispered, instinctively reaching for his hand. I'm so sorry. He accepted her touch, his fingers curling around hers. For 3 years I've been searching for the truth about what happened to her. Now I finally have it, or the beginning of it at least. What will you do? Winifred asked, though she feared she knew the answer. Find out who was directly responsible, Cole replied, his voice hardening. Jackson was just following orders. Someone higher up gave the command to kill my sister. Winifred tightened her grip on his hand. Not alone, she said firmly. Whatever you discover, whatever path this leads you down, you won't face it alone. Cole's eyes widened slightly at her declaration. Winnie, this isn't your fight. Perhaps not, she acknowledged, but I've discovered I'm rather good at fights that aren't technically mine. And I owe you a debt I can never fully repay. You owe me nothing, Cole insisted. I didn't help you expecting anything in return. I know, Winifred said simply. That's precisely why I want to help you now. They stood in silence for a moment, the sounds of the celebration washing over them without really penetrating their private bubble of understanding. In the distance, Winifred could see William searching for her, Catherine at his side. Your brother is looking for you, Cole observed, following her gaze. You should return to the celebration. Will you come with me? Winifred asked, not ready to end their conversation. Cole hesitated, then nodded. For a while. But there are arrangements I need to make, people I need to speak with about what Davis found. As they walked back toward William and Catherine, Winifred felt a curious mixture of emotions: concern for Cole's quest for justice, excitement about her new life in Rawhide, and beneath it all, a growing warmth whenever she thought about the cowboy who had ridden to her rescue when all had seemed lost. The remainder of the evening passed in a blur of introductions, conversations, and more dancing, though none affected Winifred as profoundly as her waltz with Cole. By the time William escorted her back to the hotel, she was exhausted but oddly exhilarated. You seem to have formed quite an attachment to Garrison, William observed as they climbed the stairs to her room. Winifred considered denying it but opted for honesty. He's a good man, William. Better than circumstances have allowed him to be, perhaps. William studied her face in the dim light of the hallway. Just be careful, Winnie. Cole Garrison has demons that drive him. Until he makes peace with them, he may not be capable of the kind of attachment you deserve. I'm not certain what you mean, Winifred replied, though her flushed cheeks suggested otherwise. William smiled knowingly. I think you do, but it's your life, and as you reminded me earlier today, you're quite capable of making your own decisions. He kissed her forehead. Good night, sister. Rest well. Tomorrow begins a new chapter for all of us. Alone in her room, Winifred stood by the window as she had the night before, gazing out at the now quieting streets of Rawhide. The Founders' Day celebration was winding down, with only the most dedicated revelers still gathered in the town square. Movement caught her eye, a familiar figure walking purposefully toward the livery stable. Cole had changed back into his trail clothes, and even from a distance, Winifred could sense the determination in his stride. Without consciously deciding to act, she found herself hurrying downstairs and out into the night. The streets were largely empty now, making it easy to follow Cole's path to the livery. As she approached, she saw him leading his saddled horse from the stable. "You're leaving," she said, stepping out of the shadows. Cole turned, not entirely surprised to see her. "Not for good," he assured her. "But there's a man in Denver who might know more about my sister's death. I need to speak with him before the news about Jackson's arrest reaches the territory." Winifred moved closer, her heart pounding in her chest. "You promised I wouldn't face this alone. The same applies to you, Cole Garrison." His expression softened in the moonlight. "I'll be back, Winnie. You have my word." "And if I asked you not to go at all?" she ventured. Cole sighed, reaching out to tuck a strand of hair behind her ear, his touch gentle. "Then I'd be torn between a promise I made to my sister's memory and a future I never expected to find. But I'd still have to go. I can't rest until I know the whole truth." Winifred nodded, understanding even as disappointment washed through her. "Then go with my blessing. But return to Rawhide when you've found what you seek." She hesitated, then added softly, "Return to me." Something flickered in Cole's eyes, a longing that matched the one growing in her own heart. "That's a promise I can make without reservation," he said, his voice rough with emotion. Then, with a boldness that surprised them both, he closed the distance between them and kissed her, a gentle, questioning kiss that asked permission even as it was granted. Winifred responded instinctively, her hands coming up to rest against his chest as his arms encircled her waist. When they finally parted, both slightly breathless, Cole rested his forehead against hers. "I've been wanting to do that since you stood up to those outlaws with more courage than men twice your size," he confessed. Winifred smiled, her heart full. "I've been wanting you to do that since you promised I'd see sunrise again." Cole's answering smile was tinged with regret as he reluctantly stepped back. "I have to go, Winnie, but I swear to you I will return. And I'll be here," she promised. Building a life in Rawhide that has room in it for a former lawman with a tendency to rescue damsels in distress. With one last, lingering look, Cole mounted his horse and turned toward the western edge of town. Winifred watched until he disappeared into the darkness, her heart simultaneously heavy with his departure and light with the promise of his return. As she walked back to the hotel, she reflected on the extraordinary journey that had brought her to this moment. From a sheltered Boston lady to a woman who had faced outlaws, infiltrated a mining operation, and fallen in love with a complex and honorable man in the space of a single week. The Wild West, it seemed, suited Winifred Jones far better than she could have imagined. And as the first hints of dawn began to lighten the eastern sky, another sunrise. Just as Cole had promised, she found herself looking forward to whatever adventures awaited in this new life she had claimed for herself. 3 months later, on a crisp autumn morning, Winifred stood on the porch of a small but comfortable house on the outskirts of Rawhide, watching as a rider approached from the east. She had been expecting him. A telegram had arrived the previous day announcing his imminent return, but the sight of Cole Garrison riding toward her still caused her heart to leap. He had been gone longer than either of them had anticipated, his quest for justice taking him not only to Denver, but to Santa Fe, St. Louis, and eventually all the way to Washington, D.C. His letters had come regularly, detailing his progress and, increasingly, expressing his longing to return to Rawhide to her. In his absence, Winifred had flourished. She had taken a position teaching at Rawhide's small school, using the education that had been intended to make her an ornament in Boston society, to shape young minds on the frontier instead. She had witnessed her brother's marriage to Catherine Calloway, a joyous occasion that had united not only two people, but two of the most influential families in the territory. And she had established herself as a respected member of the community, her Eastern refinement balanced by a practical approach to frontier life that earned her the admiration of even the most skeptical old-timers. But through it all, she had waited for Cole, refusing several suitors who had been drawn by her intelligence, her connections to the Jones-Calloway interests, or simply her quiet beauty. Now he was here, dismounting in front of her home, his face leaner than she remembered but his eyes brighter, as if a weight had been lifted from his shoulders. "Winnie," he said simply, removing his hat as he approached the porch. "Cole," she replied, unable to prevent the smile that spread across her face. "You kept your promise." "I always do," he reminded her, climbing the steps to stand before her. "And I've kept the other promises I made as well. I found the men responsible for Aliner's death. They've been brought to justice officially this time, through the courts." "I know," Winifred said. "The territorial newspaper carried the story last week. 3 executives of the Eastern Mining Consortium that backed the Blackwaters, convicted of conspiracy and murder. It must bring you some peace." "It does," Cole acknowledged, "though nothing will bring Aliner back." He hesitated, then added, "But it also frees me to look forward rather than backward, to consider a future I never thought I'd have." He reached into his pocket and withdrew a small, worn velvet box. "I've carried this across 5 states and 2 territories," he said, his voice suddenly uncertain. "Wondering if I was a fool to hope, if you might have changed your mind in my absence." Winifred's breath caught as he opened the box to reveal a simple but elegant ring, a small diamond flanked by 2 tiny sapphires that reminded her of his eyes. "Cole Garrison," she whispered, "are you asking me to marry you?" "I am," he confirmed, his expression vulnerable in a way she had never seen before. "Sheriff Davis has offered me a permanent position as his deputy. I've accepted. Rawhide will be my home now, our home, if you'll have me." Winifred didn't hesitate. "Yes," she said firmly. "Yes, I will have you, Cole, today and all the days that follow." His smile as he slipped the ring onto her finger was more brilliant than any sunrise he had ever promised her. When he gathered her into his arms and kissed her, Winifred knew with absolute certainty that her journey west had been leading her to this moment all along, not to her brother's claim or to a new beginning, but to a love as vast and promising as the Wyoming sky above them. "I told you you'd see sunrise again," Cole murmured against her lips. "What I didn't know was that you would become my sunrise, Winnie, every day for the rest of our lives." In the distance, the sounds of Rawhide going about its daily business created a backdrop to their private joy, a reminder of the community they would build their life within, the future they would forge together on this wild frontier that had brought them together against all odds. And as Winifred led Cole into the home that would soon be theirs together, she silently thanked the outlaws who had surrounded her wagon on that fateful day. Without them, she might never have found not only her place in the West, but the man with whom she would share it, a cowboy who kept his promises, who fought for justice, and who had claimed her heart as surely as she had claimed his.